So if you find this sleep story helpful or interesting, then give it a thumbs up, leave any comments that you've got below, and if you aren't already, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you can receive notifications of when future sleep stories go live. I have dozens and dozens of stories already on my channel that you can go and search. I also release new stories every single week, so I hope you enjoy this story. So just take a moment to allow your eyes to close and allow yourself to begin to comfortably drift asleep. And as you begin to comfortably drift asleep, I'm just going to tell this sleep meditation here in the background. And while I tell this guided sleep meditation, I don't know whether you'll drift comfortably asleep with the sounds of my words or perhaps the spaces between my words. And as you comfortably drift asleep, you can begin to have a sense of walking along a stony beach, and that sound of your feet crunching through the stones, and the water's a little bit rough, but not too rough. It's rough enough to hear it grinding up on those stones, rolling up on the shore, dragging those stones back out to sea. It's rough enough to have some white water on the tops of the waves as they roll into the shore and break on the shoreline, and that crashing sound as the waves break. And as those waves break, so you can almost get that salty air taste while walking along, and the smell of the salty sea air. And the sound of each footstep that you're taking. And after a while you can notice some rocks on the shore a little way in the distance and begin to walk towards those rocks. And the rocks stretch out into the sea and up onto the shore. And as you reach the rocks, so you can take a moment to sit down on one of the rocks a little way back from the sea. And noticing the smoothness of the surface of that rock beneath you from years of that sea rolling over it. And currently the sea is a little way away, breaking on the shore. And you can still hear it, but not necessarily taste so much of the spray. But you can notice the way the spray seems to make a fine mist in the air that seems to hover just along the shoreline. And you can notice the colour of that sea. And you can tell from its colour the way it's been churning up the sediment under the water. You can see dark shadows of clouds travelling across the ocean. And way off further out to sea, You can notice the blanket of rain passing by. Almost like a fog beneath a cloud. And you can feel the wind on your face. And as you relax on that rock, just really taking in the environment, absorbing the experience of your surroundings. You begin to notice that the tide seems to be turning, that sea seems to be gradually moving away. That just watching any one wave, you'd probably not notice, because one wave might happen to roll in further than another. But you notice with enough time that gradually that water's crashing a little bit further away from you as time goes on. And while resting there for a while, you can begin to notice how there's a certain rhythm to those waves. A rhythm to the way the wave rolls onto the shore, pulls back out to sea, and then every 7 or so waves, perhaps there's a slightly larger wave. And just by focusing and observing, you start to notice the rhythms of nature around you. And while you do, you allow your eyes to gently close, almost as if you're beginning to meditate, resting on this rock. Initially meditating on being in the moment, on noticing the rhythms of nature around you, the pattern of the way the wind blows on your face, the sounds of the water, the rhythm of your breathing, the rhythm of your heart, and you know that deep within you there's many other rhythms as well. There's rhythms of cell division. There's rhythms of the way that various parts of your body work. There's rhythms to your digestion. You have a sleep cycle and a wake cycle. You have rhythms for being more alert and being more inwardly focused. And as you rest there on the rock meditating, so it's like you're beginning to almost run a thread through the different rhythms, almost like an awareness thread, stitching all these different rhythms together, noticing the commonalities, noticing how certain rhythms are similar, and how they fall into patterns and into sync with each other. How you can fall into sync with the world around you. And as you continue to drift and dream and relax deeper into the meditation, so your mind begins to travel elsewhere. You start to hear the sound of walking through a meadow. And then you start to get that awareness that it's you walking through the meadow. And then you start to have the feeling of your legs walking through a meadow. And then the sounds of a breeze on grass, of a breeze in trees in the distance, the sound of some spring birds in the distance, darting in and out of those trees, singing from the trees. And you start to get a sense of a blue sky, of the beautiful green grass, and begin to find yourself going to that meadow, and the warmth of the sun on your face, like walking through a meadow on a pleasant spring day. And as you walk through that meadow, so you can notice the way the grass blows in the breeze. You can notice the different shades of green and the other plants in the meadow. And notice that here in this meadow, there's no salty sea spray smell, but here in the meadow, there's a kind of fragrant smell from the flowers. And you walk through the meadow, down to the far end of the meadow. And down at that far end of the meadow is the most vivid and beautiful cherry blossom. And you walk towards that. And you take a look at the plants. You touch the petals and feel the waxiness. Feel what they feel like under your fingertips. And you go and sit down under a tree. Rest your back against the tree. And have this sense almost like you're drawing this scene, like drawing onto a canvas to remember the scene. But it's drawing into your mind to remember this scene in your mind, with the vivid colours, the movement, and how that can be conveyed. And as you rest there, so you can hear sounds in the background, off in the distance. You become aware that there must be a nearby town, way off in the distance somewhere, because you occasionally hear the distant sound of roadworks, distant sounds like someone's perhaps using an electric drill. And you imagine what it would smell like. That smell of an electric drill drilling a hole in some wood. And the smell you get as the drill passes through that wood. And that smooth feeling you can get if you drill a hole large enough to put a finger through, how smooth the inside of that hole can be. And how satisfying that smooth feeling can feel. And while you let your eyes close under this tree, to give yourself a chance to heighten your hearing, almost like being able to pinpoint these different sounds. You start to notice this slight panting sound and the sound of footsteps. And as you listen to that panting and the different sounds of footsteps, you notice that someone must be approaching your area, walking a dog. You can hear the footsteps of the dog rapidly walking along, in time with the slower footsteps of a person. And the footsteps of the person sound like such a leisurely stroll, getting closer and closer. And then you open your eyes and you notice someone with their little puppy walking into the meadow, turning off of a dirt track. And then they let their dog off a lead. And that little puppy with its little wrinkly face starts bounding through the meadow. You wonder, it's so short, whether the grass tickles its belly as it walks and jumps through that meadow. You can see the way as it bounds through that grass. Its mouth is open, its tongue flops out. The wrinkles in its face seem to flap and bounce around all over the place with each leap that it takes. And the owner throws a ball, and the puppy runs after it, overshoots it, has to run back on it. And you just watch as they seem to have such fun together. The attentiveness of that puppy, of the owner, and the attentiveness of the owner with the puppy. And the way they seem to both be sharing a world where just the two of them seem to exist, almost unaware of anything else. And you wonder whether they're experiencing time seemed to almost stand still. Well, when they find out how much time has passed, they'll be surprised, because it will feel like they were just having fun for a moment. And then you watch as they continue across the meadow. And they head down to a stream at the far side of the meadow. And the puppy leaps off the bank and belly flops into the stream. And then does rapid paddles with its feet to get to the shore again. Runs up on shore, shakes itself off, climbs the bank again, and does the same again. And you watch that puppy seeming to just enjoy being in the moment, behaving without a care in the world. And you wonder whether its owner thinks of themselves as an owner, or perhaps a friend, because they seem to have such a good relationship. And as you rest there, so you let your eyes close again. And as your eyes close, you have this sense of flicking a coin into the air that feels to you like you just flicked a coin in the air. Have the sound of a flicking coin into the air. And you have this sense of seeing that coin spinning up in front of your face and spinning slower and slower and slower until that coin is spinning so slowly in midair. Then as that coin begins to lower down, and you follow with your eyes, and the coin reaches your hand, you see some feet stood just in front of you. And you notice they're a woman's feet. And you quickly look up and see this friendly looking woman stood just in front of you. And you realize that all around you now looks like the courtyard of a palace. A beautiful, pristine, white palace with the most beautiful and perfect white stonework. And she starts to talk to you, and a part of you's thinking you'd quite like to go and touch the stone, see how smooth that stone is, and touch the joint, the space between the stones, to see how smooth the stones are from one stone to another. But you feel that you should listen to what this woman has to say. And she explains to you that she's a queen in this land, and that somehow you seem to have appeared here in her courtyard. And you stand up, you greet her, you say who you are, and you're unsure how you've arrived here, but you have this sense that somehow it's to do with you drifting in your mind, allowing your attention to go deeper and deeper inside. Almost like you're going deeper and deeper through multiple levels inside your mind. And you don't know whether this is deep inside your mind or somehow projecting you somewhere else, or maybe even some time else. And the Queen asks you to walk with her, and the two of you walk through the courtyard, ascend the steps, and she opens the large doors to the palace. You both walk into the palace, instantly onto an echoey marble floor. And you're surprised at how light it is in this palace. And she tells you that not only is she the Queen, but she's also a magical queen. And what it is that she can do magically is help people to connect with their inner well-being, to connect with their inner serenity, to create a sense of harmony inside the body. And she explains it a little bit like helping all the musical instruments in an orchestra to be playing different parts of the same song so that everything sounds right together. And she can help people to go in and find those instruments that are perhaps playing just slightly out of sync, or slightly the wrong notes. And she can help them to make that orchestra sound beautiful. And she can even help them to add extra instruments to their orchestra. And she talks about how an orchestra can play with just a few instruments, and then as you add more to that orchestra, the piece of music can grow as that music feels fuller with the addition of more and more instruments playing just the right thing. There can be something magical that can happen. You can gain a certain felt sense of that. It can go from just being a tune that you're listening to being a tune you're feeling and experiencing. And you intuitively understand this. And you follow her through the palace, up some stairs, through a door and into a room that looks almost like a vast library. And at the back of that library is a pedestal with a book seemingly just floating there, just above that pedestal. And she opens that book, and it seems to sparkle and shimmer and glow as those pages turn themselves to the page that she's aiming for. And she starts to read from those pages. And you don't understand the words she's reading. But there's something about her tonality, something about the way she's reading that seems to almost resonate through you. You find your shoulders relaxing. You find the muscles through your body gently relaxing. You find your eyes quickly blinking, and then wanting to shut and remain shut. You find your breathing slowing. And there's something comfortable about your eyes being closed. A part of your brain says this is an unusual situation. No one has told you to close your eyes, and you know there's someone else stood right there. And under most circumstances it would be unusual to just close your eyes. But here it feels like the most natural thing in the world. And you know, with your eyes closed and your muscles relaxing all the way down to your feet, that somehow you're remaining comfortably stood up in place. And you feel very comfortable stood there. You don't feel like you're going to fall over. You just feel like almost like a soft statue. You know, at any point you could open your eyes, you could walk and move around, but you wouldn't want to ruin this pleasurable feeling of relaxing deeper and deeper. And as you drift inside your mind, listening to that queen, reading from that book, you hear the sound of a gong on a singing bowl. And you just automatically find your awareness focused on that note ringing out, following that note, almost visualizing a waveform in your mind as it starts larger until it becomes almost like a slightly vibrating string. And then you hear a second gong on that singing bowl. And you follow that note as it stretches out, following it to the last moment. And then you hear a third gong on that singing bowl. And you follow that note. And as you do, so you begin to notice a temple forming around you. And in front of you, you see what looks like a monk sitting cross-legged on the floor. And he hits a larger gong with a mallet. And this gong has a deeper tone to it. You watch that gong as it vibrates, as that note continues. And you watch as it vibrates, and that vibration gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And your attention narrows down on that more and more to try and keep following that vibration, to be aware of every last bit of it. And you watch to the point where you can't see the vibration anymore. And then something strange happens. It's almost like your senses get drawn into the gong, viewing it up close. And you notice, the closer you get with your mind's eye, that the vibration is still continuing. It hasn't yet gone. And in your mind's eye, you continue zooming in, deeper and deeper, until you see a lattice of atoms, and notice how these vibrations are passing on an atomic level, and how that vibrating never really goes. It just becomes one with the vibrations of the atoms. And then you find your attention back on that monk. And they tell you you've been sent here by the Queen, that you've got some healing to do, and that healing is a very vague term. But it's a vague term because there's so much that can be healed, and it's down to you to discover what it is that you need to heal for you. And they explain some people come here because they need to heal the mind. Other people come here to heal the body. Some people come here to heal both. And others come here to heal what they don't know, or what they can't give a name to. And that here in this healing space, labels aren't important. Engaging with the process will allow your inner wisdom to know what to do, and you follow them as they walk deeper into the temple, and they walk down a corridor, and there's the flickering flames of torches down both sides of that corridor, the light dancing on the walls and the ceiling, the shadows dancing, footsteps echoing. And in the middle of the temple, you notice how the light begins to fade as you walk away from the torches that were illuminating the corridor, and you walk into that darkness. And as you walk into the darkness, so you hear the sound of a waterfall. And as you near that sound of a waterfall, you can see some sparkling light and a slight blue glow coming from water. A little bit like light from bioluminescence illuminating that water. And you realize there's a waterfall travelling down the back wall of this room. and that this doesn't seem to be an ordinary waterfall, the way it's making that water glow blue and the white sparkling. And the monk asks you to just place your hands gently in the water, and you lower your hands into the water, and you can feel the coolness of that water, that tickle touch of the water as it moves around your wrists. And you feel that coolness gently spreading into your body. And the monk lets you know that there'll be some healing taking place that'll come up through your hands, through your body, and it'll know where to stop and heal. And then it'll continue on its journey. And that you can relax as that happens, and the more it happens, the deeper you can relax. And the monk suggests you just take a moment to kneel down, keeping your hands in that water. And so you kneel down, you close your eyes, you focus on your breathing and focus on being aware of the coolness of the water passing up both arms and then down through your body, almost like it passes deeper through your body with each breath that you take. And you have this sense of clarity in your mind, almost like someone's clearing a fog, blowing that fog away from your mind. Relieving discomfort. And the monk explains this is just the first step in the inner healing process. And that from here you're going to have some more experience that'll build on and deepen that healing and your inner control over your healing processes in your body and in your mind. And so while your body here kneeling begins this healing process, your mind begins to go on a journey into an even deeper healing process, a healing process of gaining control. And you notice yourself in a room with a computer, and that monk is still stood beside you. And they tell you that on this computer you can turn things on, you can turn things off, you can turn things up, you can turn things down. You can see a map of your body, you can see a diagram, and you can tell the computer program where to focus its energy and what to ignore. You can tell it what's a threat and what's not. And so you sit down at that computer and you begin to program in and teach that computer what things it should look out for as threats in the body, and what things it should leave alone. And you highlight everything that the immune system shouldn't be attacking. And then you press enter and you program that in so the immune system stops any attacking of anything it shouldn't. You look at the catalogue of things the immune system should attack, and you type anything new in there. And you program all that in, and press enter and save that. And you decide to make sure that the settings for monitoring are at an appropriate level. And in the back of your mind, you have this awareness that that healing near that waterfall is still continuing on, while in your mind, you're here in this room, working on the programming that runs your mind and body. And you're turning up sensitivity to some things and turning down sensitivity to others. And you're looking at the little question marks on some of the pages, give you some guidance. And the monk lets you know that you can come here again and use this computer anytime you want, and deepen the work you're doing or do different work. It's entirely up to you, that this is your space, your time, your mind and body, and this is your interface. And so you continue to do that work. You realize there's settings for things like volume control. And you can turn down the volume to inner dialogue. You can turn up the volume to other inner dialogue. You can select what types of inner dialogue you want to hear and don't want to hear. You can change the pitch, the tone. You can change all the different settings for the inner dialogue. You can listen to samples sounding like Mickey Mouse, or samples sounding deeper and slower. You can experiment with the settings and save what you like, and know you can come back here and change those settings, restoring to the default setting, or change it to something entirely new, trying different things out. And the monk explains that none of this is stuff you do consciously. It's all stuff you have to go this deep inside to do. You have to go multiple levels deep inside to make these settings. And once you've made all the settings and taken time over this, the monk rests their hand gently on your shoulder, and you find yourself drifting back to seeing your hands in the water and feeling that coolness finish passing through you, and having a sensation like this inner work is done. And the monk walks with you back to that corridor, walks down the corridor back out to the front of the temple, and says that you're nearly done here. You just have to take some time to go down to the woodland down there, and then on beyond the woodland. And you'll know when you go back to that queen. But now you just need to cement everything in place. A bit like doing a bit of a walk after some exercise, rather than just stopping instantly. Sometimes you just need to take some time to cool down, to allow change to integrate, and to make minor adjustments to that integration. And so you head down towards the woods. You walk into the woods, noticing how the footsteps turn into slightly more thuddy sounds as you walk into the dry ground in the woods, hearing the rustling leaves around you, noticing some dancing shards of light on the path in front of you as the sun struggles to shine through those trees. Passing out the other side of the woodland and seeing a dense fog hanging low over a lake. And then noticing that the sun is continuing to rise in the sky, and that as it rises, so the dancing shards of light in the woodland behind you become stronger. And in front of you, you notice that fog beginning to rise up and become thinner. And as it does so, the lake beneath the fog becomes more visible. And you walk down towards that lake. You sit down by the lake. You can hear the sound of the water of the lake. You can notice that off to one side of the lake is a stream, and off to the other side of the lake is a waterfall. And you notice what looks like a shark swimming in the lake. And you just watch as it so gracefully moves through the water. And it's not a particularly big shark. It's probably just catching some small fish. But you just notice how graceful that looks from the surface, seeing the wake of the water on its fins, as it seems to almost be just gliding through the water. And you think to yourself that it's quite rare to be fortunate enough to see a freshwater shark. And you stand up, walk along that lake, following that lake round to the stream. And as you near the stream, you can hear that trickling sound. You can notice the way the water runs faster nearer the stream, nearer that mouth of the stream. And you see, walking along near the stream, a waddling aardvark. And you notice, down here a bit further away from the woods, that there are some termite mounds. And as that fog continues to clear, you realise how much grassland there is around here, and how dry most of the land, all the way down here. The further away from the woodland you get, the further you look downstream, you see how much drier that land is, that all the water is heading in one direction. And you can see, as the fog totally clears, a distant mountain range that you assume, perhaps, this stream originates. Maybe somewhere up there is snow on mountain tops. That at some point down the mountains that snow begins to melt, and this stream begins to form, and that all the animals around here come to the stream to drink. And you look at the way that aardvark drinks from the stream before it goes back over and manages to use its tongue to find its way into the termite mounds. And then the aardvark comes over near you inquisitively. You gently stroke its fur, feel the warmth of its body as it investigates you. And you get down on its level. And then it heads back to what it was doing. And you continue to follow that stream. And you stop at a cottage on your way, knock on the door. No one responds, you go in. You make yourself a cup of tea, or a different hot drink perhaps. You light yourself a fire. You see a robe that seems so comfortable. And you feel compelled to put that robe on and sit in front of the fire. And listen to the crackling fire as you hold that drink in the palms of your hands. Holding it a little way from your face, feeling the warmth of the steam rising up from the cups. And as you feel that steam rising up from the cup, you can feel that robe around you, the comfort of the material. And you feel yourself, as you drink that drink, becoming more sleepy and relaxed. You put the drink down, close your eyes a moment, and listen to that crackling fire. And as you listen to the crackling fire, so in your mind you hear the most beautiful sound of a flute playing, And then you notice other sounds of an orchestra, strings, a few brass instruments. And you begin to notice, coming from deep inside you, almost like an orchestra is beginning to play, starting with some random sounds, and then all falling into sync with each other. And then gaining some depth, giving you that feeling of fullness and wholeness and oneness. And then you get a light in your mind, almost like a light saying, aha, something's clicked, something makes sense, something's shifted and done. And you open your eyes, notice that fire has burned down to embers. Head to the door of the cabin, change out of that robe, open the door and notice nighttime has set in. You walk out of that cabin, and under the most beautiful moonlight, you continue following that stream as that moonlight glistens and sparkles on the water. You can hear the evening sounds, see the stars in the sky. And the bluey tinge to the world around you. And then, as you walk further, following that stream, you notice the ground beginning to change and shift, almost like merging one reality with another, and your footsteps and the sounds go from walking by a stream to walking on marble, and the light changes, and you find yourself walking down a corridor in the palace, seeing that queen standing in front of you, and you continue walking to the queen. And as you reach the queen, so your awareness is totally on being in the palace. And you look back and all you can see is the corridor of the palace. And the queen turns and starts walking just as you arrive at her. And you walk along, keeping up with her. And she walks into a large room with some comfy seats. She gestures for you to sit in a seat. You notice an aquarium with tropical looking fish swimming by a wall. You're surprised at how large that aquarium is. And the queen sits opposite you. And she tells you you've been on a journey of inner discovery and change. That you've been presented with an opportunity to take control of the inner part of yourself, to be able to guide that inner part of you, and that you've taken that chance, that opportunity to do that. and that when you leave this palace, so all those changes will be made. And she's here if you need to come back again. And she asks you about what your journey was, and explains that different people interpret the experience differently. And she's just curious, and says that being curious is one of the best things you can be, with a relaxed curiosity for things, a curiosity for wonder, for truth and beauty, and love. And she hands you what looks like a little toy, a little wooden horse. Says, here, take this, take it away with you. And you take that away with you. You put it in your pocket. You leave the palace. And as you leave the palace, so you find yourself on your journey home, where you settle down in bed. And as you settle down and you get yourself ready for bed, you notice that little model of a wooden horse. You take it out of your pocket, place it down beside the bed, and begin to comfortably, relaxed, drift asleep. And as you drift asleep in your bed, so out of your awareness, while you sleep, a glow comes from that little wooden horse, and something inside that horse communicates a message, a healing message of well-being, of peace and tranquility, a message of continuing that inner work when you sleep and dream, and it transmits that from inside the horse into your mind and body. As you drift and float deeper and more relaxed, asleep.